Alright, hello. Hi there. And welcome back to the Three Princes of Serendip. We're going to do chapter 3 today, and I've got a little bit better memory card, so I believe we're going to get it all done in a single video. So that's pretty exciting for me. I'm going to get some of these wonderful candles spinning to keep the attention of the camera. And shall we proceed? If you recall, the three princes narrowly escaped basically punishment by death when they were accused of stealing a camel. All they had done is to try to help the camel master to recover his camel by telling them, by helping him to identify some things about the camel that they noticed from the environment that they had been traveling through. They were very observant, but for trying to offer this help, they ended up being accused of stealing the camel. But they were acquitted in the end. The truth came to be told, and they made great kings with great friends with a king of Persia. And the next chapter involves their new relationship with Emperor Vahram of Persia. It's called The Ugly Plot. Not long after the princes first arrived in the imperial palace of the Emperor Vahram, on a day when spring had nudged the peach trees into bloom, Vijayo awoke to the sound of a young girl's voice. So sweetly was it raised in song, the very morning seemed to hear each tender note. The second prince was charmed to such a degree that he felt that he must hear at least once more the enchanting singer. In those distant days, however, politeness forbade him, as a guest and stranger, to ask her name. Therefore, with a gallant effort, he tried to content himself by hoping that someone would speak it in his presence, or that he might hear her voice again. As for the emperor, he continued every day to visit the princes. This being so, they early took occasion to ask if he had any knowledge of the powerful potion which ancients knew as death to dragons. Very little, said Vahram, except that a poor mad seer, called Athenum, claims to own its formula, written on a scroll and carried everywhere with him in a cylinder of silver. Once, when he came this way, Zamis, my grand keeper of the royal orders, asked its price. Death to dragons cannot be sold. Death to dragons cannot be bought, was all the old man said. Vahram raised his dark brows. But why do you inquire about this matter? He asked. Because, Vijayo said, around our home the seas are sorely plagued with dragons, and these may be vanquished only with a powerful magic. Finding his guest deeply concerned, the emperor said he would have his learned scholars consulted at once. In the meantime, the brothers were invited to attend his imperial court. At this, it was Vahram's custom to hear petitions of the highest-ranking subjects of his empire. On the appointed day, the three princes and all the nobles of the capital gathered in the great hall of silvered columns. Here 21 musicians played upon harps, and the emperor, seated on a throne of gold, wore a crimson robe embroidered with rubies and pearls in designs of crescents and peacocks. Exactly over his head hung a glistening chain from the high domed ceiling, was a crown of jewels and precious metal. Looking about them, the princes saw a Vassal King, who they were told formerly ruled one of the largest provinces of the land. With a great retinue of his officers, he had come to plead before the emperor. When permitted to speak, he said, O mighty ruler of many peoples, I have come to beg clemency for my son. Pray, revoke the dreadful sentence of banishment which you laid upon him. It appears, Vahram said, that you govern your son no better than your kingdom, which belongs to our empire. I have had to keep you nearby as a royal hostage for the good behavior of your people. With your son, however, it is different. Once trusted as an officer of the imperial treasury, he has himself admitted to stealing both bronze and gold for his own dark purposes. Therefore, he shall not step upon this land again, lest his wrongdoings multiply and spread across our domain like a foul plague. At these words, the face of the Vassal King flushed, and seemed to draw in upon itself. Speaking in a voice so low that in all the court only Vijayo with his sharp ears and those very close could hear him, the Vassal King asked for water to drink. He left the hall with his head held low. The same morning the three brothers discussed among themselves the scene that they had witnessed. Even though his son was pronounced guilty of serious crimes, Vijayo said, I could easily sense from his voice that the royal hostage harbored some plan of dark revenge. We must warn the emperor in order that he may thwart any plot against his life. That day, Vahram came to visit the brothers as usual. After all of them had jumped up quickly and bowed with deep respect, the second prince said, Your Imperial Majesty, our hearts are filled with apprehension for your safety. Indeed, I fear that even now your precious life may be in danger. How can this be? The emperor said. Unfold your thinking to me, for it does not seem possible that such can be the case, and yet I hesitate to doubt your wisdom. While your majesty spoke to the hostage, Vijayo said, I could hear the implacable anger storming through his heart. Besides, he called for water to drink, which I take as a sign of the fiery rage boiling deep within him. Vahram said, Can this be so? It can hardly be supposed that a petty vassal would dare to plan a crime against the imperial throne of Persia. Besides, in spite of my decision this morning, he has invited me and all my court to attend a feast in the palace where I permit him to live. O noble emperor, Vijayo said, could it not be that he did so with an evil purpose? I beg your imperial majesty to exercise the greatest caution before going to be a guest in his residence. When the emperor saw that all three of the princes were of similar mind, he asked Vijayo what steps they would recommend. The second prince replied, Could we not summon to those quarters some humble member of your vassal's household? Thus very quietly inquiries may be made concerning any special preparations for the feast. Now in those days it was not usual for a great emperor to speak directly to a man who was neither an official nor a member of the nobility. But in this matter so closely touching his own life, Vahram decided to do so, and agreed to Vijayo's plan. Very secretly it was carried out. The second prince sent for a young cook in the household of the petty king. When he arrived the next day, and the princes brought with him before the emperor, the poor man trembled with fear and fell on his knees before the ruler. You have nothing to fear, Vahram said, if you speak the truth. Now tell me, is any special delicacy being prepared for me, and for me alone, in the palace of my royal hostage? Your Imperial Majesty, the young man said, I have been told that at the end of the great feast he will give you, and to you alone, a certain drink. It will be in a goblet of crystal, and be brought to you upon a golden dish served with the design of a wild boar. Here he stopped speaking as if he were afraid to say any more. Yes, yes, the emperor said. What of that? Speak up. One day, sir, the cook continued, an old man with flashing eyes, but dressed as a beggar, came asking for food at the door of our kitchen. I was filled with pity. Let him slip inside, you see, and gave him soup, sir, with rice. What happened then? Vahram asked. He had finished this, sir, and was about to fall asleep when he saw the goblet of crystal. At this, sir, he suddenly sat up straight and said, Whom, may I ask, will be served with this? His Majesty the Emperor, I said. Is it not beautiful? Treachery, he said then. Treachery, treachery, and fell asleep. What thought you of this? Vahram said. Hearing his words, sir, and knowing how the king grieves over his son's disgrace, the young man went on, I could not escape a fear that the drink might be poisoned. The emperor's eyes opened wide with amazement, and he motioned for Vijayo to ask further questions. What else did the old man say? The second prince inquired. No more, the young man said, except that as he rested on a chair in our kitchen, he dozed a little and muttered verses in his sleep. Only a few words, though, did he say plainly. Vijayo caught his breath and glanced quickly at his brothers. Then he spoke to the man. What were those? He asked. Very slowly, as if wondering what they meant, the cook repeated them. And often from the sight is hidden such magic not by wishes bidden. Vijayo repeated the lines so that he would not forget them before they were written down. Sir, he said to the emperor, these verses are so like the others which we heard that I cannot but believe that they were spoken by Athenicius disguised as a beggar. For this reason, though he seemed just a poor wanderer, I entreat you not to disregard his words. Then Vijayo turned back to the young man. "And where's the beggar now?" he said. "I turned to stir the soup," the cook replied, "and when I looked back he was gone." Vahram's eyes shone with amazement, as if he could hardly believe the words he had just heard. Then, commanding the cook to speak to no one of his visit to the palace, he gave him a bag of coins and dismissed him with thanks. As soon as the young man had gone, the emperor poured out his gratitude to the princes, and especially to Vijayo. Also, he offered to let the princes lead a search for the missing seer. This offer the brothers accepted eagerly. For a day and a night, the princes and a host of the emperor's guards, riding in ever-widening circles around the capital, sought the old man, but no one of his description did they find. Then, knowing that Athenicius might appear in any of 100 guises, and could also make himself invisible, the princes decided that further searching in this way was useless. So they rode back to the palace and turned their attention to the matter of protecting the emperor. On this he soon consulted with them. "Since you ask our counsel, and because we've the deepest concern for your safety," Vijayo said, "I shall say that there seems but one course to follow. Attend the feast to which you've been asked, but when the goblet is presented, invite the Vassal King to drink therefrom himself. If he does so, you will know that he is innocent. If he refuses, it may well be supposed that he is guilty." Before long, the day of the feast arrived. The three princes rose early and prepared to accompany the emperor. When they were all on the point of departing, it happened that once more Vijayo heard a young woman's voice pouring forth a song of unutterable sweetness. Each note smote deeply the heart of the young prince. Doubting not that the singer was the same he had heard before, Vijayo was loath to leave the palace until suddenly he realized that the song long ended was sounding only in his heart. He turned about and made haste to rejoin the imperial party. After riding through land rich in wheat fields and date trees, they arrived at the residence of the royal hostage. The emperor was received with the sound of 33 trumpets, and the princes saw their host give him a golden ring set with opals and onyx. Then, while musicians played, Vahram was served his favorite dish, a sweet pilau of finest rice with saffron and tangerines. When the repast was nearly ended, the Vassal King himself brought forth a special drink in a goblet of crystal, which rested upon a golden dish bearing the design of a wild boar. "This," he said to the emperor, "is a most exquisite and valuable refreshment, prepared especially for you. Among other virtues, it cools the liver, sweetens the tongue, and drives all anger from the heart. I pray you taste and enjoy it, your majesty." Vahram looked upon the goblet which had been described to him by the young cook. There was no need to question what the brew contained. He said to the royal vassal, "If this drink has such extraordinary properties, surely you have more reason to need it than I. It seems to me quite possible that some bitterness may still be camping in your heart. Therefore, I command you now and in my presence to drink from this goblet yourself. Heaven forbid that I should taste of so rare a delicacy," said the Vassal King. "It is fit only for a mighty ruler, who like yourself is the delight and sovereign of an empire." "However agreeable and useful this drink may be," Vahram said, "my order remains unchanged. You, not I, shall now partake of its special qualities." Thereupon the royal hostage fell on his knees before his emperor. His voice, as he spoke, was filled with fear. "Alas," he said, "now I have fallen into the misfortune I had planned for you. I can only hope you will consider the distress of a father's heart, and that your mercy will exceed your severity." The emperor spoke quietly. "O petty king and base vassal," he said, "for so enormous a crime I could have you executed in an instant. But though I possess no sons of my own, I think I can understand how the loss of one, even though wicked, may distress a grieving father. Therefore I shall be merciful and let you live. But like your son, you shall be banished forever from this empire." Later, when Vahram had returned to his palace, he summoned the three princes and said, "You have served me well, and I thank you with a grateful heart. Upon each of you I bestow a robe adorned with gold and pearls, and one of my finest horses. As for you, he said to Vijayo, since it was your sharp ears that first surmised my vassal's plot, I invite you to come to me in 3 days and ask for what you will. If the fulfillment of your wish lies within my power, it shall be granted. Now, on the morning when the 3 days came to an end, the old man on a nearby farm rose early because he could not sleep. Standing at the entrance of his rustic house, he raised his eyes to watch a wild hare as it leapt up the steep sides of a mountain. Then abruptly the farmer noticed a strange bird. It had golden wings and eyes like fiery stars. Darting out of the sky for an instant, the bird dipped low over the emperor's palace. Finally it disappeared behind a rosy cloud. The people in the old man's family did not see it, for all of them were still asleep. A little later the same day, as the second prince was making ready to appear before the emperor, he was suddenly aware of the singer he had heard before. Her silvery voice rose like a delicate fountain, and each note subsided as the softest spray in the summer's twilight. At that moment the young man yearned more than ever to know her name and see her face. A few minutes later he stood with his brothers before the emperor. Vahram said to the second prince, "My gratitude to you for saving my life is like an overflowing pool. Pray, tell me what you wish." Vijayo hesitated just a moment, then calling upon all the courtesy that had been taught him, he said, "Your Imperial Majesty has already shown to me and to my brothers so much kindness that I hope you will permit us to serve you in some useful way." Vahram said, "Your generous wish shall soon be granted." Then he smiled and continued, "Since you have wanted to keep your origin a secret, hospitality does not permit me to ask it. Nevertheless, I perceive by your courtesy and bearing that you surely come of noble station. Moreover, you've saved my life. Hence it is my pleasure to bestow upon you the hand of my only sister in marriage. Let the Princess Purandocht come forth." He signaled to a servant who drew a curtain. From behind it came a royal lady fairer than a Persian rose. She had dark hair, shining eyes, and wore a robe of violet silk embroidered with pearls. Moreover, as soon as she spoke a few words, Vijayo recognized her voice as the one that he had heard in song. When the joyous prince could at last express his gratitude and happiness, he said, "Your Imperial Majesty does too much kindness to your humble friend. While obedience to my father requires that I first seek his consent upon my marriage, I assure you no prospect could be more agreeable to my heart if the royal lady also finds herself content." At these words the Princess Purandocht cast down her eyes and said, It would be enough just to obey my noble brother. But since he has chosen for me one to whom he owes his very life, and whose love of songs and stories is like my own, the gratitude and happiness of my heart must overflow." The three princes were delighted at the thought of so felicitous and high-placed an alliance, so each in turn expressed his pleasure. Vahram thanked them all again for their help in thwarting the plot of the Vassal King. Then he went on to talk with them gravely about a further difficulty. "Formerly in this country, evil arose less often than nowadays," he said, "because my grandfather possessed a device called the Mirror of Justice, which had been found by philosophers of ancient times. This glass, inherited by my father and uncle, had the property of reflecting both truth and falsehood. When two people were at a difference, both were obliged to look into it. As they did so, the face of the one who had lied immediately turned purple. The face of the one in the right retained its own color, and so the latter one would win the case." "And the loser?" asked the youngest prince, Rajasingha. "What happened to him?" "Such a one did not regain his proper complexion," Vahram said, "until he had been lowered into a deep pit, there to live on bread and water for 37 days. Afterwards, if he confessed his falsehood, his own proper color returned, and he was raised back up again." "That was certainly a wondrous mirror," said the third prince, thinking how great an aid to any ruler would be a device so remarkable. "As you can well imagine," the emperor continued, "people lived in fear of its strange power. They kept their behavior in bounds, and the land was tranquil and happy." "But where's the glass now?" said Rajasingha. "Alas," the emperor replied, "it was taken away by my uncle and given to the young queen of a country in India. she will not return it to us, for this marvelous mirror saves her land from a sore affliction." Then he showed the princes a letter received from his uncle in India. "Often," it said, "one can see hovering in the air over the capital city here a great hand with fingers extended. It stays in the sky either a long or short time, then suddenly swoops downward. In former years, whenever this happened, it would seize a man and cast him into the ocean. Now, however, the queen, whose name is Parvati, has the mirror of justice brought out to reflect the hand, whereat, without taking any of the people, it sinks back into the sea." "A strange matter indeed," Rajasingha said. "One can hardly see why Her Majesty is loath to part with so marvelous a glass." Vahram said, "Even though I have offered her jeweled rings, 3,000 pounds of silk brocade, and the fleetest horses in the world, she could not be persuaded to part with the mirror. Indeed, I am convinced that never will she do so unless some other way can be found to free her kingdom from the scourge of the fearsome hand." The emperor was silent for a moment, then said, "From what I have already observed of your abilities, gentlemen, I am persuaded that you may be able to conquer the hand, and so restore the mirror of justice to us. Also," he said, turning to Vijayo, "mindful of the wish you expressed to me this morning, I venture to ask you and your brothers to undertake the task." Speaking for all the princes, Vijayo said, "We're grateful for the high esteem your words convey and for your many kindnesses. Therefore, on the splendid horses you've given us, we shall ride into India and do all that we can to serve you in this matter." The emperor was overjoyed at his words. He thanked each of the young princes and entrusted to them rich and delicate gifts for the great queen Parvati. On the same day, the brothers received another letter from their father and asked questions of its bearer. "How is His Majesty, and how fares our country?" Bowing deeply, the messenger replied, "Your Royal Highnesses, to both your questions I must answer ill indeed. His Majesty's health has not improved, and the great tanks are so neglected that already the waters in them are dangerously low." "Then perhaps our father invites us to return," Vijayo said, opening the letter. But he read, "Balakrama was clever to describe a camel he had not seen, and it is advantageous for my sons to win the friendship of an emperor. But the dragons off our shores cannot be vanquished with mighty spears, and nothing I have so far heard persuades me that you are ready to be rulers, or that I should call you home." Deeply disappointed again, the three princes took counsel together, and this time it was Vijayo who composed a letter to King Jaiya. In it, the three brothers sent word of their sorrow at his continued illness, and begged to return home so that they might help him protect the great reservoirs. Also, having included the 2 more lines they had found, they told of their fruitless search for Athenicius. "Not only does he travel disguised, but can, it seems, make himself invisible. How then shall we ever find him, and the rest of the formula? Instead of searching farther, pray let us come back to our homeland and fight the fierce dragons with swift arrows." Finally, the letter told of the thwarted plot against the emperor's life, and of how in gratitude Vahram had offered his sister in marriage to Vijayo. "When His Majesty reads this," the second prince said, "surely he'll be delighted and allow his sons to breathe once more the fragrant air of Serendip." So full of hope, the three brothers made ready to travel into India. Before they did so, however, they made this new and serious song, Pantoum for a Petty King. "Oh, hollow hospitality, not knowing all had been foreknown. As the vassal stoops to treachery, he soon must lose his silver throne. Not knowing all had been foreknown, this petty king fails in his plot. He soon must lose his silver throne, and banishment becomes his lot. This petty king fails in his plot, as the vassal stoops to treachery, and banishment becomes his lot. Oh, hollow hospitality." That's the end of chapter 3. I want to skip back though and show you an illustration that we skipped. This is the emperor while he's dining in the Vassal King's court and considering what he'll do. And then the second image here is of him observing the goblet that was brought to him on a platter with an image of a boar. So he knew it was poison, and of course what he did right after this was give it to the Vassal King and say, "You drink it first, buddy." Alright, that's it for chapter 3. I'm really glad we were able to get this all on one video. The larger memory card we're using seems to be sufficient to do that, and I think this is one of the longest of all of the chapters. So we're going to move on next time to the Sorry Quarrel. Alright, thanks for joining me. Have a great day.